My name is Zach Gardner. I'm the chief architect at Keyhole Software. And last year, probably around Halloween, I got a little bit of a wild hair. Maybe it was the ghosts that were in the air, maybe it was the candy that was flying around. But no matter where I went, everyone was talking about generative AI this, generative AI that. And frankly, I was upset, not that everyone was talking about it, because I felt like I didn't know enough about it. I, as a chief architect, have to know everything about everything. And this was something that really just kind of bothered me. So I did is, what most people do. I went out and I was able to find a lot of people across the four corners of the World Wide Web that were able to give me their insights, their unique perspectives, their take on what are some of the good parts, what are some of the bad parts, and how should we be thinking about generative AI. And of course, because I'm going to be talking to people that are employed by companies, I always have to do my little disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this program are the views and opinions of the participants and do not reflect their employer, do not reflect their trade organizations they're affiliated with. They don't reflect grocery stores that they might have a loyalty card with. This is just me. This is just something else. We're just talking. So today, someone that I met actually, I don't know if you remember this, was about 9 years ago at a Thai restaurant. Someone I met a long time ago, recently reconnected with. Shahzad Zafar is the CTO at Trualta. Shahzad, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I don't know. Do you remember when we had Thai? It was that restaurant off of like 435. I got the Thai hot, and every time I tried to talk, I just had like just like snot coming down. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend Thai hot.
Yeah.
Thai hot's very hot.
Yeah. No, I mean Thai hog can be very painful. So I don't think I've tried it in probably 15 years now. So
Okay. Okay. Well, lesson learned. So for those, you're based in Kansas City, as you could probably guess, since, we met at a restaurant. For those that, haven't heard you at, many of your public speaking events, could you give the audience a little bit of your background? How did you get into programming? Where'd you go to university? Kind of what were some of the jobs that you did getting out of it? And how did you get into healthcare? I guess that's a good place to start.
yeah. First of all, thank you, Zach, for having me on the podcast. It's always fun to talk technology. And as you said in your intro, generative AI is a hot button topic where I had to go learn about it a lot myself just to kind of see how we apply it in our products. And just for as a technology nerd, it was fun to learn about it as well of the hot button topic. Background for me, I grew up in Pakistan, and kind of throughout, I always had an interest in computers. Not where I was in deep programming, so I did not program through high school or middle school or anything like that. Um, I mean, I remember my first introduction to computers was learning Lotus 123, if you remember, which is the precursor to Excel. And working with DOS, it was just very interesting. So I worked on the floppy disk era too, if I'm dating myself. Um, but really got into just it was interest of what computers could do was always fascinating to me. So I came to University of Michigan in Ann Arbor to do my bachelor's in computer engineering, and that's where I really got deeper into the knowledge base of computer science and what I could do with it. I think you were asking the first program I wrote. It was like like one of those standard, comp sci 101 board game type of thing, which is fascinating. I used to play that game all the time after I wrote that program. Um, but that's where I really kind of honed in my interest in computer engineering and always been interested in solving like hard problems, like thinking what we could achieve with that. And Michigan had a wonderful set of opportunities, including working on the Michigan Solar Car team, which was again like random, but like required a lot of programming to understand weather and all the other things, how to impact performance. So just different applications you could do. Graduated from Michigan, and my first job out of college was at Cerner, which is here in Kansas City, now called Oracle Health. So as a software engineer, started off there. My interest was always in healthcare, just dad's a physician, just kind of from that interest, I was always interested in health. Didn't want to be a physician, but was it just a genuine interest of how could we do healthcare? And The more I learned about it in the United States, it's a big, actually everywhere in the world, it's how do we optimize it? How do we make it better? It's a huge problem. And it's something very personal. So for me, it was like, what technology feel I can get into where I'm building cool things, solving tough problems, but at the same time, something that's more personal too, more inspiring for me personally. So that's how kind of got into healthcare from first day out of college. And I've stayed in healthcare for throughout my career. So now 18, 19 years almost. Um, it's all been in healthcare. So at Cerner, did a whole bunch of different positions, work on the core EMR side. But within that, worked in different parts of the EMR, held various roles. And it was not like a straight path, like where I was software engineer one, software engineer two, or anything. I did software engineering, I did project management, I became an architect, then became an engineering manager. It's just a whole set of different roles and responsibilities. Kind of help get Cerner's first cloud platform off the ground, and then left Cerner in 2018 to join RX Saving Solutions, which is, again, Kansas City-based healthcare startup at that time. Joined there as SVP of engineering, leading all the product development, operations, again, in a small company, you do a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
Sales engineering, which was new to me, and had to learn how to do sales engineering. Uh, but it was fun. That was kind of my first foray into a lot of big data applications in terms of how to do data science, data analytics. Grew that team out from a small team to a 300 plus people. Where in 2020, my years are getting mixed up. 2022 is when RX Savings got acquired by McKesson. I was a CTO at that time, so a couple of years into RX Savings, became the CTO. Had a wonderful time, a wonderful team, and most of the people still there are just awesome. Um, and kind of year into the acquisition is when Trualta reached out, and it was a chance to go back to a early stage company or
Mhm.
earlier stage company. Trualta is a caregiver platform. We provide caregiver education and support abilities. For me, again, it's a very personal thing of like helping people get better and provide the care they need, keep people at home, your patients and your loved ones at home longer. And I get to build a technology that enables that. So it's a niche problem. It's a tough problem, but it's something we are excited to solve. So I joined Trualta in October of last year and been here for about 6 months now,
Mhm.
and been growing. And I'm the CTO at Trualta as well, and it's been great working with this team so far.
Very cool. Well, that's funny. I didn't realize your dad was a clinician. My mom's actually an RN, and they have a much harder job than
Yeah,
we do. Like any day of the week, we always complain about dealing with, the business and product owners and developers. Like that's nothing compared to an unhappy patient.
absolutely, absolutely.
So, I mean, and it's interesting that, kind of looking in Shrilt, I noticed, there's the education component to it, there's the support component. Both of those have been really common themes that have come up like again and again and again when I've been talking with people about generative AI from a support standpoint, being able to have, chat bots. Everyone's always wanted a chat bot, but they've always been sort of prohibitively expensive to develop, to maintain. But now we have these LLMs that are just lowering the barrier to entry. And then education, being able to use something like retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, as the kids call it, to be able to have a corpus, a set of documents that these LLMs are able to pull information out of to be able to provide, just massive amounts of insights, being able to do correlation and synthesis across multiple documents that a human, it would just take, just prohibitively expensive to do. So, all good use cases for generative AI, all good use cases for generative AI in healthcare. I'm curious, you mentioned you were getting up to speed, you saw this same sort of problem, this existential threat, maybe that I did, of just this is this big new technology. This is something I need to learn more about. What was your kind of thought process with getting into generative AI? What were some of the things that you found? And maybe what's your healthcare viewpoint on how to use it? Maybe any good use cases that you've heard?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it was it came in really fast. So I think it's if you think about it from an evolution standpoint, tech has been evolving. It's been evolving every year or I'd say every 5 to 10 years, there's a big change. I think the evolution curve with generative AI is just a lot faster. Is just because I think the processing power and abilities it provides us, which is why I think we feel it a lot more in terms of like, hey, I gotta know what's going on here. Um, I think I'd say I will say I was not like the early adopter where I was like, all right, I'm just gonna put generative AI in all of our products. That was not my thought process. It was more about I wanted to understand how we could best use it. It's like any tool, like the early use cases in ChatGPT, for example, really showed us the power of it. But you can't just blindly apply what ChatGPT is doing to a healthcare setting, especially where you are dealing with a lot of privacy issues, security issues, and just like something like a misdiagnosis could have fatal consequences. So you got to be very careful in how you apply it. But that's not to say that these are not valuable. I firmly believe that uh, these models are here to stay and they're just going to make us better. Obviously, there are some of the early applications. Some I know I saw videos and stuff like a physician using it to get a diagnosis and stuff. But in all of these use cases, you still need a human intervention to make sure that it's right. There's a really good YouTube video by Henrik Nyberg. He does these really good illustrative videos. If you look it up, I think it's like an illustrative view of AI, generative AI. And he explains generative AI really nicely in that video. But it's like 15 minutes, 16 minutes, really nice bite size to learn. But in it, he mentions like you have the machines working on it, but you also need the humans to kind of make sure that it is the right conclusion that you're reaching. So that's where the role of humans in this model changes a little bit to not just writing the code, but more like verifying that the inputs are valid because the model is only going to learn from the data you feed it. So if it's not good quality data, it's going to learn not good quality things. So and then from the output standpoint to kind of educate the model that hey, this is right, this is not right, so it can learn on itself. And you can see that in ChatGPT too. Sometimes it gives you wrong answers. You tell it, hey, I don't think this is right, and it corrects itself. And that's the learning part of these models is that um, definitely can do a lot more compute, but they can have errors just like a human will have errors. So you need that double check of um, making sure that the outputs are valid. From a healthcare standing, I think there's definitely I see a lot of applicability here in when a patient is in the hospital, for example, for sepsis type of workflows, when you are processing a lot of data and you got to make correlations to say, if this is true and this is true and this happens and this is trending in this way, then a patient could be getting into septic shock. So how do you prevent that ahead of time? Sepsis research or how to prevent that has been worked in hospitals for a long time, but I think this can add so much power to it and make it that much better, faster. So there's definitely use cases there. Then you mentioned chatbots. There's definitely an application there of like how can you get help where sometimes getting a doctor's visit schedule is hard and you just need to ask a question. So could you have a WebMD chatbot that has that vetted resource of information and could guide you to make sure you ask the right questions to get the right answers, not just you Google a symptom and the first thing pop up, you're like, I'm gonna die because it's the worst possible outcome on Google result. But a bot that can ask you questions back to make sure it guides you in the right direction and gives you that quick help you need and or direct you to a provider and clinician like it needs to. So can definitely make that access a lot easier. In our world, for example, in caregiving, the way we are currently looking to use it is like, um, so when we are looking at caregivers and what are they searching for, what are they looking at, how can we give them more better recommendations using some of these models? Like what's the, you know, for the type of care that I'm providing, what's the most relevant piece of education. We have a ton of education resources on our platform, and sometimes you can hard code topics that, hey, if I choose dementia, here's what I'm going to pop up. But sometimes those conditions are a combination of multiple conditions. So how can we put a model in place that can do smart recommendations? And maybe you're on a community forum and you're chatting, and we can pick up words from there to say, oh, but besides dementia, you're also worried about fall prevention. So we can surface up the right training at the right time. So how could we make the navigation for a user on our system a lot easier? So in terms of finding resources, I think it can become a lot better. So, I mean, those are some of the things that immediately come to mind. Obviously, there, when it comes to the back end of healthcare insurance processing, uh, approval for claims and things like that, there's definitely an application there of how could you make it better where you can decide based on, again, all these different factors that a prior auth can be approved automatically. So you don't need human intervention. So some of those could go faster. Today, if you try to do a prior auth, sometimes it can take days before you hear back. And as a patient, that is painful. So how could I get that done faster? Claims approvals, finding errors in billings, things like that. Those are on the back end. Obviously, there's a lot of application on that side too. So long story short, there's a lot of application that where this could be used, and I think we'll see it more and more prevalent in the industry going forward.
Mm-hmm. I kind of like what you said at the top about the innovation cycle that we've been seeing in 2010. I think one of the big innovations is maybe like single page applications. That was really when I remember that took off. 2015, it does follow that 5 to 10 year curve. 2015, I remember microservices. Like that was like all that we could talk about. We had Docker, we had all these tools at our disposal. We didn't quite know how to use them yet. It was maybe a year or two before GraphQL came out. And so the stage was set for 2020 to have yet another breakout year. We had a false start with blockchain. It's IMO. I think that was a little bit of a false start, but it was like 2020. This is going to be innovation this year, and then like it all
Yeah.
shut down. And it's so weird. I'd been talking with people about this maybe just a few weeks ago, where it was like we haven't really had a major innovation that happened like right after COVID. It was like we all went home, we were all working remotely, and it really wasn't until 2023, like the Olympics got delayed, like so many things got pushed off, and then
Mhm.
it was like 2023. That was like the year when we're like, okay, this is our new tool, this is something that we're going to have to grapple with. You could put your head in the sand and pretend like it doesn't exist, or you could figure out how you embrace it. And so I like what you're talking about in terms of chatbots, providing answers. But the thing that you said that was really insightful that no one has really talked about yet, chatbots, at least what we have now, they're designed, I think that's a slight misnomer. They're answer bots. They're not chat bots. They're answer bots. They're designed to give you an answer. They're designed to sound authoritative. They're designed to sound like Moses of just, like, this is the answer. Like they just have like a very powerful voice. Maybe we should have question bots instead of chat bots, of like, well, have you thought about something in this way? Even if someone doesn't ask it that, it can never provide an answer. It can only provide a question. We can call it Socrates. And, if someone gets a patent on it, we had the idea first. Um,
Yeah.
and in terms of how it's being used too, I think you're absolutely right. It is not something that is going to replace a clinician. It is not something that is going to replace a human. It is another tool. I mean, this tool certainly didn't replace humans by any means, but it allowed us to be more effective. It allowed us to become mobile. It allowed us to connect people with payments. It allows people in sub-Saharan Africa that don't have internet connectivity to have 5G or 4G connectivity. So the co-pilot mentality, I think, is absolutely the right way that we should be looking at this. And since you brought up co-pilots, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on probably the most famous co-pilot of our day, GitHub Copilot? Have you started using it yet? Have you started taking a look at it? And are you worried, like every other dev manager, every other CTO that I've talked to about just the kids, they're not going to have to walk 15 miles in the snow anymore. They're not going to have to worry about all the things, all the scar tissue, all the best practices, the muscle memory that you and I had to learn. What's your hot take on GitHub Copilot?
To find that one missing semicolon that's causing your build
Oh
to
yeah.
and impossible to find.
Oh yeah.
I've bad memories. But no, I think kind of like what we said about other bots and stuff. Um, I think it's as the name suggests, co-pilot, right? It is there to help you get better. It's not going to replace the fundamental thought process for you to design something well. Now, if you want to do basic workflows, sure. I mean, there are examples on you can watch where it says you can give it some inputs and ChatGPT will generate a full application for you for simple workflows. But most of the time when we're solving complex problems, you need to think about the design aspect of it. So, um, on one way, it will help people code faster. We have used GitHub Copilot a little bit. Right now, we're on in the JetBrains IDE, and JetBrains has an AI equivalent assistant too. We're actually using that in our team. Um, and early results are that it's there for help. And one thing like a developer told me was like, it was kind of nice. I went into a new code base that I was not familiar with, and it helped me summarize kind of what it does. So it kind of saved them time of like having to go through line by line, really understand it. The AI kind of gave them a summary of what this code is doing, how it's operating. So again, it saved them time. So I was like, great, that's a good application for an assistant, is to say that I went to a new code base. Now I don't have to go learn the intricacies. It kind of help guides me through it. So, but even with code changes, you still have to worry about that it is providing the right code changes. And it's there are a couple of talks out there on the Software Engineering Daily podcast too about from JetBrains' AI person and GitHub Copilot's designer had a podcast there too recently. I heard we just talk about they're like, yeah, we're just learning and improving those models just like all the other ones. In terms of early development, I mean, I do get a little concerned for early stage engineers that if they don't learn the basics of it really well, then sometimes it's harder. But then at the same time, I mean, that's progress, right? So people who have learned, like folks who learn in C probably complain about when C++ came out. And when Java came out, it took away some of the complexities of C++. And then other languages came off, like Python, Ruby, they made it even simpler to code. Like my middle schooler is now learning Python and
Hmm,
they can easily understand it and learn it. So it's a lot faster to learn. But underneath the covers, they're all following the same fundamental coding principles. So you definitely still have to understand them, but it definitely makes it a lot easier for folks to get up and leverage the application. So, and then again, depending on what you're doing, right? If you go for a company that is building very deep software engineering tools, then you'll have to go learn the depth of programming. But if you're just building general products, you're probably fine by not knowing the intricacies of the language. And now, granted, well, when there's a memory error, now you'll have to somehow figure out how to go troubleshoot it or find a deep expert. But that's where the specialties will come into play. There'll still be people who are very deep into the theory of it and really understand how to manage the infrastructure, how does it work with the network, and how the security works in this case. All of those will still be there. So I don't think those go away in that regards.
agreed. Yeah, those of us that actually remember what a Stack Overflow is, then discovered the website Stack Overflow, that's okay. No, people don't have to know. So, where can people go to learn more about you, learn more about Trualta? What social networks are you active on? Do you still have a MySpace? Do you have a Zanga? Are you still active on
Uh,
that?
no.
Okay, good. No one said yes yet. I'm waiting
Yeah.
for someone to.
I don't. I'm trying to think. I used to have that Google Wave. If you remember the Google Wave,
Oh yeah,
remember
forgot
that?
about that thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
they killed
Uh,
that so quick. They killed that like it's hot.
yeah, yeah. I think the best place for to follow me is LinkedIn. That's where I usually post any interesting articles, any talks I do and stuff. For me personally, that's my main go-to. I'm on Twitter as well, but it's mainly to follow people. I
Yeah,
don't post much on Twitter. LinkedIn is where I do most of my posting. For Trualta, just Trualta.com. And it's again, it's happy to always chat with people and learn. And honestly, most of my learning is from conferences and talking to people like you and others. And I listen to a lot of different podcasts just to kind of get that breadth of knowledge and different perspectives, honestly, because we were talking about AI, just with AI, every other podcast has a different perspective and they just help better understand it, I feel like, than me just trying to figure it out all on my own.
agreed. Agreed. Well, Shahzad, thank you so much for coming on. It was a blast as always. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you in the future.